as much as I like tell and construct stories, when I'm watching a story, here's what's going on with me. I'm just going, oh my God, I just can't believe it. So when I think about campaign 3, but the fullness of my like my mental state is what's going to happen next?
I love Crown of Candy. I can't believe you made me like cry about candy. I fully went into that being like, Candyland and Game of Thrones. Cool, this will be fun. No. And then more, same thing, man.
I don't know what to tell you. It's just the genesis for it was like looking at Candyland, the box of Candyland, and you're like, look, it's a little like Candy King and a Candy Queen and a Candy Castle. But then you start to apply adult logic to it, and you're like, so that Candy Castle was built with candy like levies against candy serfs, like in a candy fiefdom somewhere. Like you start to sort of put the pieces together. I'm sure you're well aware, monarchy is historically not a super enlightened form of government.
Yeah.
So there you go. So that's where it all started. That's why it has to be brutal and sad. People need to see little gumdrops and M&Ms just absolutely, murdering each other in ruthless political intrigue.
I love it. And then you were the one who actually asked Matt to DM the Ravening Wars. What was it about your experience on Calamity that made you want to invite him to do a prequel for A Crown of Candy?
This had to happen, I feel like. First of all, Matt is like an incredibly dear friend, the sweetest dude in the world, and happens to be one of the most like influential, brilliant, talented storytellers of all time, right? So I am constantly boggled by the fact that this dude is a pal, right? He's just so incredibly, he's a remarkable storyteller. Going and doing Calamity was such an incredible gift because prior to even working at Dropout, when I was just like, I was like, just moved to LA, I was an improv teacher. I was watching the big finale of campaign 1 of Critical Role, losing my mind. I'm sure I don't need to tell you, it was nuts, the seeing Scanlan and the ninth level count, it's like all this incredible, all these moments from that epic finale. And what ends up happening is, years later, I get contacted by Matt and Travis to go talk and pitch Calamity. Calamity ends up happening and doing this prequel in Alexandria, which was so special. And then at the same time, Matt's no stranger to Dimension 20. He's been a player on Escape from the Bloodkeep. He was on Pirates of Leviathan. And all the while, the basis for A Crown of Candy is Game of Thrones, and in the zeitgeist is House of the Dragon, which is this prequel series to Game of. So it's like it's coming from every angle. It's like it's a reflection of Calamity. It's a reflection of House of the Dragon, which is itself a reflection of Game of Thrones, which reflects onto A Crown of Candy, which is the precursor to the Ravening War. It's just like, and this perfect. It really was like a perfect storm. And then talking to Matt, I was like, this guy, when I think of Matt Mercer, I think of a guy who needs to be DMing more. The guy does it so infrequently.
He's like taking breaks all the time, never busy.
Constantly taking breaks. He has so few responsibilities and obligations. That was honestly the hardest part of asking Matt, is because I was like, it's this perfect, like, zeitgeisty culmination. All of these threads, it mirrors so many other threads of Calamity, House of the Dragon, and just I love Matt, and just the idea of like, I would love for Matt to come run something in the Dome. What setting would be the best? Like, to think of how epic and fantastical and medieval and dramatic Talarum as a setting is, and you're like, Matt would knock this out of the park, because there's lots of different types of humor. The humor of A Crown of Candy is to be so silly and then to be as dramatic and sinister and ominous as possible, which, like, Matt killed it. To take something as silly as like the pun names of, like, the Fellowship of Destiny's architects from the first episode, the FDA from the first episode of the Ravening War, and be like, Matt nailed this. He's like the best person to take Calorum and do the joke of it, because the joke of it is to do it as seriously and dramatically as possible, right? So he crushed it, and it was perfect. And the one thing I was nervous about was asking him to do it because of his schedule, because I was like, it was not even the word, like I didn't even have the concern that he would say like, oh, I can't do it. My concern was he would go, yeah, and I would be like, I have condemned my busy friend to more work. So it was very sweet that he did it, and I hope we made it as easy as possible for a guy as busy as him to come into it. And it was it was a ball. It was a huge gift.
Oh my gosh, the FDA reveal at the end, I lost my mind. I was like all of you just jumping around like, what? It was so good. Was that actually part of the lore doc that you sent him, or was that something he came up with on his own?
That is a Matt Mercer original. FDA is a Matt Mercer original. I when I saw it, I was like, oh, this dude is locked in, right? Like, because it was so epic and dramatic and incredible. And that first episode, there's just all these incredibly clever puns and jokes and things like that. Because that was like, for me, when I went and did Calamity, it felt like such a fun stretch to go like, oh, this needs to be kind of, like quite dramatic and tragic. It has to be really sad, and to stretch into that kind of dramatic space. So it was such a delight to see the reflection of that, which was Matt being hysterical, really funny. His voices, his NPCs, nailing the kind of goofiness where the goofiness needs to happen in A Crown of Candy. And then to also have these intense arch puns everywhere. And I was like, I don't know, my heart lit up when I heard FDA. I was like, this guy fully has the setting in his DNA, gets it like nobody, it was great.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved when you were first saying like referring to them as the Bluminati, and then he did the FDA reveal, and I was like, oh, we're in for a ride. Like
we're in for it. It's time to strap in, right? Like, yeah, 100%. That was a buckle up moment for sure. It was amazing.
And then you have such a rare opportunity as a creator to let go of the reins and just play in this world you made and still have surprises and everything. What is that experience like?
Incredible. I mean, it's kind of the first, I've been running games and writing LARPs and telling stories for basically my whole life. And I've gotten chances to play in the past, but to make something and then play in it, to watch like ideas of yours, it's really special. I kind of don't know how to put it into words. It is, it's like there's a certain piece of like, a thing that you've had to be the steward for forever. And it's like, you're the one person who's like adding sticks to the fire of like, okay, I got to like build the next dungeon and plan the next encounter, do the next thing. And then suddenly someone comes and lays another stick on the fire and it gets brighter. And you go, and it's a sense of like relief and wonder and excitement. Being a DM is you're not lonely at the table, but when you're doing your little prep work, it can be a little bit lonely. So I think to have those meetings with Matt and talk about the lore and everything else like that, it's just watching a brilliant mind choose to, with its limited time on this earth, come in and honor something you've made is just a feeling of like joy and gratitude. I don't really know how to put into words.
I feel like that's the dream as a storyteller, to be able to just fully immerse yourself in what you've created.
It's something that like, it's a gift to watch it happen in real time, right? Because these like great stories, like think about how many like, Sherlock Holmes was written by Arthur Conan Doyle. How many people have written a Sherlock story? Everyone today that's writing X-Men or Superman or any of those comics is someone who grew up reading them, right? So like the idea of like passing stories on to other storytellers is deep, deep, deep within our culture. And it's a gift to be able to just do it, I feel like, contemporaneously, to like be there for it happening and love and trust the person that you're watching do it and to have a front row seat for it. Oh, is the best. It's like being on a roller coaster. I'm sure people have seen my face in the first episode where I'm just wildly agog and overjoyed the whole time. It's incredible. Beats the hell out of Splash Mountain. It's amazing. It's great. I can't recommend it highly enough. It was awesome.
You said that you built, I gotta get this right, Bishop Rathaniel Sharlock to be good at biding, and that he's kind of been biding his time for a while. So what were you excited to explore about this character as a player?
I think I was really excited to explore a character, I'm a pretty like easy I'm a pretty easy tell in terms of the through line of the player characters I've made. Where for me, the escapism or the dream of role-playing games is to be somebody at the heart of the story of their world. So if we're in a Regency love story, you better believe I'm like an honor-bound military man. If we're in the magical kids at a magic boarding school story, you better believe I'm going to be someone who's like cursed by some, like what's the way to like be in the main like theme of what a dungeon master is trying to go for. I don't want to be like the character that's like the Statler and Waldorf. I don't want to be commenting on what's going on. I want to be I want to be picked up by the storm and thrown around. I want it, whatever the DM's got planned, I want to be the most impacted by it, right? And I think for Rathaniel, knowing that this was all going to be all about the Ravening War and the history, and specifically about like intrigue and skullduggery and mystery. If you tell me this is a 6-episode skullduggery campaign, I'm going to skulldug with the best of them. I'm going to make a character that can't get below a 20 on a deception, with 6 constitution, because I don't want to survive. I want a reason to have to sneak around. Please don't fight me. I'll die. Right. So there's a lot of like, that's always what I'm most excited to do. I just want to, if a DM hits the tuning fork and says, here's the key we're in, I want to be right on that key.
I am curious, because I loved Calamity. That was heart-wrenching.
Thank you.
Would you want to come back to Alexandria, but with Matt as a player after getting to play in your own world with him as the DM?
I would love that. And what's really funny is I was very nervous about that idea because I talked with Abria, because Abria, who founded Alexandria Unlimited, took the inaugural run and then came back to Kaimal and developed all these amazing parts of the Alexandrian lore. She had Matt at her table, and we've talked about the like, ooh, there's the guy right there who knows everything. And by the way, Alexandria's got let's call it like a fair amount of lore. I don't know if you've been playing in that world for a couple of years now, right? So there's a lot to know. There's a lot, and there's so much rich texture and history that is so beloved in that world. And I think there was part of me when I was doing Calamity, and they were like, "Oh, Matt's not going to be at this one," where I was like, "Oh, bummer. I would love to DM for Matt," but I was also in a way like, "Okay, at least the guy who knows this world backwards and forwards is not going to potentially like be at the table with like a disapproving, like, that's not right at all," which is the weird little paranoid story you tell yourself.
Yeah.
After having done Ravening War and realizing that there was no part of me, it was just pure joy. Now I would be so excited to go back to Alexandria with Matt, because I kind of I experienced firsthand how gratifying it is to have another dungeon master come in and get to play in that world. So I'm like, oh, like, yeah, that's amazing. That's so much fun. I would love to do that for Matt. I think that would be awesome.
Would you start it with Earth or Air after Matt started his?
Well, now the problem is if there's only 4, so whatever one I feel bad, whatever one I don't do, I'm only leaving Matt with one other choice. So I maybe have to text him and check in and be like, I don't want to like, if you like don't have an affinity for Earth or Air, like I don't want to be, it's like the etiquette of like the last cookie on the plate kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to, so I'll figure I'm good with either one. I'm easy. I'll do Earth or Air, I have a slight preference for Air, but we'll talk about it.
That killed me when he opened with water and you and Abria cannot hold it in immediately.
Right away. So it was so funny. I also found out that it's like become like a catchphrase a little bit for like some of the people at CO. I had no idea that like after we did Calamity, people would be like in Slack being like fire, like having this like, and so I knew it was really, really fun like having Matt come in and do water, especially not only because it's a fun mirror to Calamity, but once again, just like with the House of the Dragon stuff, it's actually reflecting multiple things at the same time. Water is a pretty meaningful element in the history of Calorum. It's a lot more ominous. Like if you were asking people what they're more afraid of, fire or water, at least in Candia, they'd probably tell you water. And so I was like, not only is that the guy's a genius, man. Like it's not only such a good joke that is metatextual, it's also an incredibly ominous way to start the season. So like, ¿por qué no los dos? It was amazing. I loved it.
When I interviewed Matt and I asked him about Dimension 20 potentially following in Critical Role's footsteps with like an animated adaptation. And he mentioned that they've been sharing notes with you guys. So is that something you've been actively thinking about?
I would say for our purposes, and I'm going to be a little bit mysterious right now. And I'm just going to say that we are very blessed to be working in an industry with so much camaraderie, mutual championing, and open sharing of like information and wisdom and insight, and having those pals over at Critical Role who we talk with about every subject under the sun is a real something we're all deeply grateful for. That's my very genuine and heartfelt, but also very politic answer to your question.
I'll take the mystery. It's not a no. I'll take it. If you were to do it, though, do you have a pick on what you would think would be a really fun one to animate? Because Matt did give his picks, so I'm curious about yours.
Oh, wait, what were Matt's picks?
I'm not going to tell you until you tell me yours.
Caitlin, you're going to publish it. I'm going to see it. I can't believe it. Okay, what are my picks? To see them animated, I think that there's a world where the visual stunningness of the world of A Crown of Candy, as developed by Rick Perry and our amazing artist Samir Barrett, incredible artist who came back for Ravening War, the visual look of A Crown of Candy is so beautiful that I think if we were doing something in the style of like Legend of Vox Machina, like that has those beautiful scenic paintings and has that kind of feel to it, that's a hard one to beat. I will say, and this might be controversial, I think the action sequences from Fantasy High are some of the best in the world. So to the degree that animation, the root word of animation being animated, the force of life, like seeing Johnny Spell's car chase animated would be incredible. But I think that you can probably make a great argument for so many of the seasons, and seeing them animated would be awesome. Yeah, it would be incredible. I answer all of them. Let's do them all. Why not?
That's my favorite answer. I will tell you Matt's. Matt's was A Crown of Candy, which he said was his favorite season, and Unsleeping City.
Well, here's the funny thing: is Unsleeping City I've thought about before, and I like I think Unsleeping City. I would love to see an animated version of Unsleeping City. I wonder what style it would be. Like, I kind of love the like Into the Spider-Verse like animation stuff, that kind of animation stuff for Unsleeping City. Just the way, like, honestly, one of the best depictions of New York in any media ever. Like the New York animated in Into the Spider-Verse felt more like New York than a lot of movies like shot on location in New York who somehow managed to still like drop the ball. And you're like, that's not it. I would say that, yeah, animated would be great. There's also part of me that's like, what if that were like, many years down the road from now, like having a live action version of Unsleeping City or Unsleeping City theme park? Why not? Let's go. What are all the things you can adapt stuff into?
we've had like a mention of Laren in a recent episode of Critical Role. So I'm curious, are
Yes.
you see how the elements of Calamity are going to impact campaign 3? And do you have any that you like headcanon that you would really want to see, like maybe Sarah's ancestors in the sphere, or not ancestors, descendants and the sphere?
There are so many things I'm excited for. And when Laren's name came up, I went, there's this wonderful moment of you go, and especially because because the moment is like, it's Abria at the table being like, Lauren, like it has such a joy to it. I think that thinking about the ramifications and the fallout of Calamity and how they kind of move throughout campaign 3, like in early conversations about Calamity, I remember Matt talking about, like, we were talking through ley lines and apogee solstice and a bunch of the bigger cosmological things, right? Because one of the benefits of going that far in the past is that Avalier can have kind of whatever shape it needs to have because it's destroyed, X amount of centuries before the events of campaign 1. But the cosmological stuff is incredibly prescient, right? Those things of big world spanning ley lines and the moons and all of that stuff, it's quite significant. So I think that in a lot of ways, a lot of that has come back into campaign 3 already. In terms of what I would be like excited for or headcanoning or looking forward to, I feel like I'm gonna be a bad fan for a second, because I'm like, I don't have headcanons, if that makes sense. I think that when fans watch stuff and engage with headcanons, they are operating at such a higher level than I am. Like people that would like watch Lost and go on message boards and try to figure it out. For you to know, Caitlin, I went to the Magic Castle in Los Angeles where they have like magicians that do tricks and stuff like that. And I was politely asked by the staff to stop gasping. That I was just gasping. So you got to understand, when I watch Critical Role, it's not a thing where I'm like in the Discord being like, okay, now connect that. I see people do that, and to me that is like magic. Like as much as I like tell and construct stories, when I'm watching a story, here's what's going on with me. I'm just going, oh my God, I just can't believe it. So when I think about campaign 3, but the fullness of my my mental state is what's going to happen next? And I stay at that, like, honestly, like elementary school level for most of my media consumption.
I feel like that's the purest form of watching it. I do the exact same thing. And then my friends are like, how did you not pick up on this? You write stuff for a living. I'm like, dude, that's not what part of my brain was working. Come on.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm not. Yeah, it's like when I am doing the magic trick, I'll know how it works. When I'm in the audience, I just want to be gasping. That's all.
I completely agree. Speaking of gasping, Matt shocked you guys with that time jump at the end of episode 1 of the Ravening Wars. What is your favorite part of the fact that he's incorporated time jumps into this and how it affects like character evolution and dynamics?
It is, first of all, once again, an amazing reflection of House of the Dragon, which is kind of the sort, like, it has that weird mirror relationship. So there's a very cool, savvy, clever, media literate, like, component of that. But also, I think that, like, there's something really profound in terms of what the Ravening War is about, that you cannot see collapse into a timeline. I used to write live action role-playing games for a living. And, I was talking about all the different genres we had worked in and all the different kinds of stories we were able to tell. And a friend of mine said something that was very chilling to me, chilled me to this day. The thing he said was, well, yeah, we work in a lot of genres, but the moral is always the same. And I was like, what do you mean? And my friend went, you can save the world in 3.5 hours. And I went, ah! And I was like, that's right, because that's about how long games are. It's always an apocalypse. We're always averting it. We always get the job done. It usually takes about 3.5 hours. And there are these constraints of the medium that you don't think of as impacting the content, right? But they do kind of impact the content. You take a television show like The Wire that's all about like complex interconnectedness and ensemble cast. could you say something that had the same moral if it was a 2-hour feature film? Maybe, but probably not as well. Probably not as well, right? And I think, Matt, looking at the constraints of the form, using time jumps to talk about the true wheel of history is such a brilliant way to show this war in what is fundamentally a 6-episode miniseries. I think it's really clever. And I was like, I think part of what you're seeing when I'm so elated about it is not just the surprise or the shock, but also the delight that we're actually going to be able to create these characters' arcs over an amount of time that honors the gravity of the situation, right? That was brilliant.
Yeah, because like with Calamity, you have such a short amount of time. There's still arcs and everything, but such a short amount of time because you know the end is coming. So I was expecting something similar. And when he was like, nope, we're going to go through the war, I was like, oh, again, completely flipped any thought, like notion I had of what this was.
I literally, but like you're saying, talking about medium, this is I have it in my desk still. This was my little player document for Calamity that I gave to the players for character creation. And it's a little multi-page. This was like the precursor to the 20-page lore doc we talked about on camera. But if you look at it, it's a lot of the little images are all feature films, right? It's like Jurassic Park, Rogue One, Independence Day. There's a lot of like Calamity's structure is a disaster movie. And I love that the Ravening Wars structure is a kind of grand, very like Roman, this like horrifying march of time that like moves throughout. It's very, very cool. I really love it.
Kind of speaking of like this building concepts with like Calamity, but primarily with Dimension 20, what's the development process for you when you're coming up with a new season? Because I love how you guys merge genres and play with stuff like Crown of Candy is a great example. Fantasy High is a great example where it's like you wouldn't necessarily expect that, but it works so well.
A lot of that is improv training. And by that, or honestly, comedy training, right? So taking Mike Trapp, an amazing College Humor cast member, head writer, who has this great newsletter that's, I think, on hiatus at the moment, but everyone should check it out, called Chuffa. Which is a comedy term for chuffa is the nonsense dialogue at the beginning of a comedy sketch. Have you ever seen a sketch that starts with someone being like, well, all the dogs in my basement have founded a bicameral government, like something where you're like, what? And then the sketch sort of starts. That's Chuffa. And his newsletter called Chuffa has a really great delineation of this concept within comedy writing and comedy performance, which is basically that comedy notes a contradiction that hinges on something recognizable that makes sense, right? So you take a Crown of Candy and you go, well, sweet little candy childhood gumdrop make-believe sugar plum fairy doesn't seem to go with holy war, betrayal, throat-slitting palace intrigue. But it does. Like it contradicts. But look at Candyland. Look at Game of Thrones. Those are monarchs. Like the contradiction is already hinging and exists somewhere in our popular culture, right? A lot of the comedy, The Unsleeping City or whatever, is based on like lots of urban fantasies, really, sort of like fantastic. But there's something inherently about New York. Like you look at something like Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere that's like set in London, and you're like, wow, this old world European city with these ancient places. It's like there's something that's like seems so fitting about that. That probably should be secretly magical. And then you go to New York, and it's like, hey, I'm questing here, and there's again a contradiction because New York is magical, but it's kind of not, right? So I think that's how we end up cracking a lot of those season concepts is you're looking for a contradiction that nevertheless the lines are not parallel. Somewhere the lines cross and intersect in a hinge that justifies and explains and connects to something grounded. I know that's very abstract, but does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that's super cool.
Yeah. Hell yeah. This is the old improv teacher and me jumping out. It's years and years of teaching improv.
I love it. And then one of the things that was so much fun was getting those like Easter eggs of characters we'd either met or heard about in A Crown of Candy in the Ravening Wars, as well as concepts that were introduced, maybe like Allie Beardsley's Get Slammed Down Big Style.
Slam Down Big Style. Hell yeah. Hell
So
yeah.
great. What was your favorite part of really like getting to see those aspects, especially knowing what the outcome is down the road?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like we know the macro, but we don't know the micro, right? And so that's a very reflective of Calamity thing, right? Like the idea of, well, the Ravening War happens, but there are so many questions unanswered in the interim. Important question, big. People aren't even ready for where this season goes. Like you've only just started. You will be amazed what happens in the next 5 episodes of this show. Truly, it's unbelievable. But like as you're saying, watching that, like the other little Easter eggs and things pop up, it was so fun. It invites so many fun, cool connections. It's like it rewards fans that like love A Crown of Candy while still being like this brand new story that people can jump into and enjoy. And I don't know. It also is just so cool to watch like that, like there's like Slam Down Big Style was like not in the lore doc. So how Matt got that, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like we didn't make a point to be like, by the way, in this region of the world, the euphemism for coitus is getting slammed down big style. That did not happen. So, you know, it was very, very special. It felt again like a big honoring of the source material.
There's so many little things like that get added by the players that crack me up. And the fact that Matt incorporated it was so much fun to me because it was just, I don't know how to explain it other than it can, like, it at the same time fully, like, again, immerses you, but also takes you out of it because you're like, what just happened?
Literally what just happened. Yeah, it's unreal. I can't believe it. It's just, yeah, it's very special. The guy is a genius, man. It was a pleasure and a joy. It was a privilege.
And then I know on A Crown of Candy, all the players had to have backup characters. Is that true for you guys with the Ravening War too?
I'm going to say you might just have to wait and find out.
Ooh, I like that.
Ooh, we might have to wait and find out. For this, you know, it's a 6-episode miniseries. So if we did have to make backup characters, that would be pretty intense, I would say.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I literally could talk to you for the entire day, but I don't want to take up your whole day.
Caitlin, it's such a pleasure and a privilege. I deeply appreciate it. And these questions were awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you so much. I cannot wait for more episodes. The first one is so good, and it's so good. And I hope we see you back on Critical Role too.
I fingers crossed. It's wild. I love playing D&D. I'd love to go back to Critical Role, more Dimension 20, all of it. It's just how about it? What a life. Let's go.